Elias Carter had always believed land remembered. It remembered footsteps, seasons, laughter, and grief. It held everything quietly, without judgment, and gave back only what it was given. That belief was the reason he had never sold the Carter acreage, even when developers had come with polished smiles and numbers that would have changed his life. Instead, he leased it. The community that grew there called itself Silver Ridge Estates, a place of trimmed hedges, quiet streets, and a golf course so green it looked painted from the sky. The Homeowners Association prided itself on order, beauty, and rising property values. They were careful, organized, and confident in their decisions. Elias had been careful too. Buried deep within the lease agreement, past the clauses about landscaping, maintenance, and shared amenities, was one line he had insisted upon. The fenced northern quarter, including all marked and unmarked resting places, shall remain undisturbed in perpetuity. It had seemed like a formality to them. To him, it was everything. The corner no one visited. The burial ground sat at the edge of the property, where the trees grew thicker and the air cooled even in summer. It was small, 12 graves marked by weathered stones, some barely legible, others carved by hand long before machines touched the land. His grandfather used to bring him there as a child, brushing leaves off the stones, telling stories about each name. "They are not gone," the old man would say. "They are just resting where they belong." Elias had promised, years later, standing alone after the last farewell, that the land would stay untouched. And for a long time, it had. At Silver Ridge, the board met on a Thursday evening under warm lights and neat agendas. "Hole 9 is underperforming," said Harold Bennett, the HOA president, tapping a map with a pen. "We extend here, curve along the ridge, and bring it around for a stronger finish." A board member leaned forward. "That fence section, isn't that unused?" "Technically," Harold replied, flipping through a summary of the lease. "There's some old note about preservation, but nothing that should interfere with development." No one asked further. The plan moved forward. The morning it changed. The crews arrived early, before most residents were awake. Engines hummed, tools clinked, and the quiet corner of Silver Ridge was no longer quiet. The fence came down first. The markers followed. There was no ceremony, only efficiency. Stones were lifted, ground leveled, earth reshaped. By midday, the space that had held generations of memory looked like any other patch of land prepared for landscaping. A groundskeeper named Lewis watched from a distance, unease tightening in his chest. He had seen the stones before. He had asked about them once and been told simply, "They matter." By evening, they were gone. Elias was repairing a gate on another property when his phone rang. "Mr. Carter." Lewis's voice was hesitant. "I think something happened at the north corner." Elias wiped his hands slowly. "What kind of something?" There was a pause. "They cleared it." The world didn't stop, but it narrowed. The drive back felt shorter than it should have. Elias didn't rush. He never did, but his grip on the wheel stayed tight the entire way. When he stepped onto the land, the air felt wrong. He walked past manicured greens and carefully shaped paths until he reached the ridge. For a moment, he stood still, as if refusing to believe what his eyes were showing him. Flat ground, fresh soil, no markers, no fence, no trace. Elias stepped forward and knelt, pressing his hand into the earth. It was soft, newly turned, unfamiliar. "They forgot," he murmured, though no one was there to hear it. But it wasn't forgetfulness. It was dismissal. The HOA board gathered again, this time with Elias sitting across from them. He placed a copy of the lease on the table, open to a page marked with care. "This section," he said quietly, "was not optional." Harold adjusted his posture. "Mr. Carter, we understand your concern, but the expansion benefits the entire community. Property values." "You removed 12 graves." A board member cleared her throat. "We were under the impression it was historical land, not actively." "It was protected," Elias interrupted, not raising his voice. "By agreement. By law." Harold leaned back, forcing a calm tone. "Surely we can come to a compromise." Elias closed the document. "There's no compromise for this." Legal notices arrived within days. The clause the board had dismissed wasn't vague. It was precise, enforceable, and absolute. violation of the protected grounds granted Elias the right to terminate the lease in full. Silver Ridge had been built on borrowed land. Now that borrowing was over, the community reacts. At first, residents didn't understand. Then the notices came. Conversations spread across driveways and sidewalks. Is this real? They're saying we have to leave. Over that corner. Some were frustrated, others confused. A few, after hearing what had been removed, grew quiet. Lewis spoke to a small group one evening. They didn't just clear land, he said. They cleared people. The word stayed. The weight of choice. Board members who once spoke confidently now faced questions they couldn't easily answer. Why didn't you check the lease? Why didn't you tell us? Harold found himself alone in the meeting room one night, staring at the map that had once seemed so promising. The curved line of the new golf hole now felt like a mistake drawn in permanent ink. The conversations. Some residents sought out Elias. A woman named Marin approached him near the ridge. We didn't know, she said gently. Not all of us. Elias nodded. I believe you. Is there anything that can be done? He looked at the land for a long moment. Some things, once undone, don't return the same way. But they can still be honored, she replied. That stayed with him. Time moved forward, as it always does. Families began preparing to leave. The neighborhood, once defined by routine, shifted into something quieter, more reflective. Not everyone blamed the same people, but most understood one thing. A decision had been made without care, and care had been the one thing that mattered. The restoration. Elias didn't rush the rebuilding. He worked with historians, stonemasons, and records to identify and restore the 12 graves. Each marker was placed with intention, each name treated with the dignity it deserved. A new fence was built, not to hide the space, but to protect it. This time, a small plaque stood at the entrance. This ground holds memory. Treat it with respect. The golf course expansion stopped where it was. The land remained. And though Silver Ridge would not exist in the same way again, its story would. Elias often returned to the ridge, standing quietly among the restored stones. The land felt right again, not unchanged, but settled, remembering, just as it always had.